I'm Alan Householder, and I'm interviewing Clark Tidwell today on behalf of the Nashville Bar Association Historical Society to get his history for preservation. And Clark's been a lawyer in Nashville since around 1970, with currently in the law firm of Lassiter, Tidwell, etc. So, Clark, could you give us a little background of where you grew up and how you ended up at Vanderbilt?
Well, actually, I started practicing law before 1970.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But thank you. That makes me younger than I really am.
Well, you look younger than you. I'm sure you really are. Okay.
I grew up in Centerville, Hickman County, Tennessee. Wonderful place. It's bisected by the Duck River. It was a wonderful place to grow up. It was a good time in which to grow up. There didn't seem to be crime or the bad and awful things that we hear about today. I walked to school, beginning in the first grade, and somehow I made my way to Vanderbilt and went to
Where'd you go to high school? Hickman County?
I did.
Oh, great.
The Hickman County Bulldogs.
Okay, that's near Grinder Switch.
That's right. I still got my leather jacket.
Oh, okay. Outstanding.
I can't wear it, but I still have it.
Wonderful. So, at Vanderbilt, when did you start at Vanderbilt?
I started in 1956.
Uh-huh.
I graduated in 1960.
Yeah.
Nashville was a different place then, much different, but it was a good experience.
Okay. What did you major in at Vanderbilt?
I majored in economics.
And what extracurricular activities did you have there?
Too many.
Oh, I know you were in the Naval ROTC. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was, and remember, in the late 50s and early 60s, we were fortunate in that there was no war going on in the world, I think. And so my passage out of Vanderbilt and into the uniform of a second lieutenant was not stressful. In fact, I look forward to it. I got sent overseas with the 3rd Marine Division. I spent a year on the island of Okinawa, which is a semi-tropical island south of Japan, and thoroughly enjoyed myself.
How long were you in the Marines?
I think I got out early because of the surplus of Marine second lieutenants.
What was your job in the Marines? I mean, were you in bombs or maintenance, or what was your specialty there?
Well, at that time, the Marine Corps had a philosophy about officer training where a Marine officer was supposed to be able to do everything. So we were trained as, first and foremost, as infantry officers, as artillery officers, and then had a multitude of other jobs. For instance, I was the paymaster, and on payday, I would take an ammo box, an empty ammo box, and I would go to the dispersing officer and have it filled with about $50,000 in cash. I would check out a 45 caliber pistol and the keys to a Jeep, and I would take off, and a blanket, and I would take off around the island, paying all of the Marines on the island, all of the enlisted Marines. I would put a blanket down over a card table. I had a computer printout of the Marines who were going to get paid. They showed me their identification. And from the printout, I knew how much they were entitled to, so I would pay them in cash, and they would sign for it. Never occurred to me that there was any danger in driving around that island with $50,000 in cash. It just never entered my mind that could have been a problem.
Okay. So after the Marines, you came back to Vanderbilt Law School. How did that happen? Have you always had an interest in law, or what inspired your law school entry?
Well, actually, I really loved the Marine Corps, and I aspired to be a career Marine officer. But my colonel told me that I hadn't gone to the Naval Academy, and unless I had married an admiral's daughter, I'd never be a general. And he suggested that maybe I ought to think about law school, and that's what I did.
Oh, and so when did you start law? You went to Vanderbilt Law School, but when did you start that?
Well, let's see, I graduated in 1965.
Okay. So you must have started about 1962 or right in there then.
Or three, I guess.
Yeah, okay. And then, so after law school, what did you do as far as professional, legal profession?
Well, I met a fine man who happened to be a justice on the Supreme Court. His name was Chester C. Chatton from Winchester, Tennessee. And he needed a clerk, and I needed a job. So for a year, I clerked for Judge Chatton on the Supreme Court. And when that was over, I needed a job. And I met another man by the name of Tom Shriver. And Tom Shriver was running for district attorney. Nobody thought he was going to win, but he needed campaign workers, and I didn't have a job. My clerkship was over, so I went to work for him on a volunteer basis, and lo and behold, he won, and lo and behold, he hired me as an assistant.
Surprise. So how long did you work as assistant DA?
For a year, I think.
Okay.
And then two lawyers had gone into practice here, Bob Taylor, Tommy Slaughter, and they had been hired by the state to handle land condemnation cases for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And there were a lot of cases, and they needed help. I needed a job.
Yeah.
So I started trying land condemnation cases, and we tried hundreds of cases. This is when all of the interstate highways were coming together in Nashville. So we were busy on that for about 10 years.
Oh. So how many of the cases that you were involved in did you actually try as a trial lawyer?
Believe it or not, we tried them all.
Wow.
At that time, the transportation people preferred that a jury would tell the state how much it owed a landowner rather than them making an administrative decision. So we tried most every case.
Seems like these cases, a lot of times you get the landowner with his appraisal and the governmental entity with their appraisal, and then they cut it in the middle and seem like they're settled a lot nowadays. Is that, find that to be quite more of a situation now than it was then, obviously?
Well, as I said, we tried most of the cases before a jury then.
Yeah.
But that was representing TDOT. After that was over, I started representing landowners. And I do that to this day.
Yeah.
And now mediation is in vogue, and so most of the cases are mediated.
Yeah, so that was my experience in the little bit that I've done involved in that. So, yeah. But so where were the jury cases held? Were they held in the county where the property was that was being condemned, or were they here in Nashville, or how did that work?
Well, all of our cases were here in the circuit court in Davidson County. That's what we were hired to do.
So were they all involving Davidson County real property, or was it you have some from out of county property that had been condemned?
Well, with the exception of the Natchez Trace Parkway, all of the properties were in Davidson County.
Okay. So notice on your resume on the internet that you're also involved in canoeing and camping. I've seen you on canoeing before. You seem very experienced at that. Tell us some of the interesting, more challenging places you've open canoed and kayaked.
Well, to start with, I started out to be a golfer, and I played golf on Saturday and Sunday, and we had 2 small children. My wife stayed at home with the 2 small children, and I played golf. And it didn't take long for her to get tired of that.
Yeah.
And so she bought me a canoe.
Oh.
And so that started a lifelong passion with paddling. And she and my 2 sons have enjoyed whitewater paddling to this day. And next summer we're going down the Grand Canyon.
Well, I assume you're going on a raft and not an open canoe.
Well, 25 years ago we went in an open canoe.
Wow, there's some nasty whitewater in places there.
Needless to say, that was over our heads. Next summer we're going down on a commercial raft.
Okay, yeah. So, what about the Ocoee? Have you tried to do that in an open canoe?
Yes.
That can be challenging.
Very challenging. Wonderful place. We've canoed in several western states, in Costa Rica, and enjoyed it very much.
What about camping? Have you were some of the most interesting camping and hiking that you've done?
Well, last summer, or 2 summers ago, we went to Wales and hiked, my wife and I. And we've hiked in the Rockies and enjoy the outdoors.
Okay. So, what are some of the largest condemnation cases that you've been involved in?
Well, the largest was an entire city block that was owned by Central Parking. And I represented the landowner, and Central Parking chief executive officer was a man named Monroe Carroll. And Mr. Carroll testified in that case, exhibiting an unbelievable photographic memory. He's Mr. Carroll, now deceased, but he could start at the Cumberland River and go to the Gulch and tell about every land transaction that had occurred, who the buyer was, who the seller was, how much the property brought, and the circumstances of the sale. It was an incredible display of memory and intelligence. And all I had to do was ask a few questions, and he won the case. As I remember, the jury discounted or ignored the opinions of the expert appraisers and went with Mr. Carroll.
Okay, so well, is there anything else you would like to share with history about your career?
Well, yes. I've been very blessed to be a lawyer at this particular time and this particular place. I can count on my hands the number of times that I've been treated unfairly by another lawyer. I don't know whether I've been lucky but I hold lawyers in high esteem in this community where I practice, and have been fortunate to be among them from time to time over the years. I've gone to court on Friday morning on motion day before the motion started just to see my friends. Now, I had some trumped up business in the courthouse, but I didn't have to go up to the fifth floor of the courthouse. I could have gone out the front door and which I guess I should have done, and instead of sashaying up to the fifth floor and going into a couple of courtrooms to see my friends.
Yeah, well, that's...
Well, I guess the thing that keeps me energized as a 76-year-old lawyer, as a 76-year-old condemnation lawyer trying eminent domain cases, is that there never has been nor ever will there be two properties exactly the same. They're always different. The clients are different. The property's different. And so each time I start a new case, I've never seen it before. It's a new experience. I like that.
Is there some lawyers that you've competed against more than others?
Well, in the old days, I say old days, when I was doing work for the state, the condemnation bar was small.
Yeah.
And two of the lawyers who stand out were Charles Frazier, who was really a mentor to me. Now, he was on the other side, but he really taught me eminent domain law. And a spunky lawyer named Harry Lester, who became a judge. We tried dozens of cases against each other without a crossword ever being exchanged between us. I'm not sure that happens today, but they were giants in the profession.
The law firms would have the Christmas parties, the big firms, and everybody would be invited. I always thought that was interesting. So did you make the rounds on most of those Christmas parties?
Well, I did get invited a time or two to the cocktail hour of the older lawyers when I first started. But then a transition happened with me and I think my friends. We all started jogging. We all started being active in the outdoors. And so taking a drink of Jack Daniels at 5 o'clock in the afternoon really interfered with our workout schedule. So I don't remember that other than occasionally and Christmas party. I will say one thing, one humorous thing, and this happened down in Williamson County, and I think it was a TDOT case. No, it was a Natchez Trace Parkway case, and it was in the old courthouse, historic courthouse on the square, and the air conditioner was not working. It was middle of the summer. All the windows in the courtroom were raised, and that just let the noise in. That really didn't help a whole lot. And I was examining a witness, and we heard a loud crash out the window, and the judge was Henry Denmark Bell. And Judge Bell said, "Mr. Tidwell, go to the window and look out and report to the court what you see." And I did that, and I said, "Well, Your Honor, it looks like a Purity milk truck has run into a green station wagon parked on the square." He said, "The court will be in recess for an hour."
Wonder that vehicle belonged to that we got run into. So sure, okay. So
do you have any thoughts on, in the time you've been practicing, how has the Nashville legal community changed? Has it changed for the better, or do you think it's changed for the worse?
I lament the passage of lawyers who are not vanilla. I'm not saying vanilla lawyers are bad, and maybe that's because of my age, but somehow I hate to see lawyers being shoved into a box, a one-size-fits-all box. And I know we have to have rules of procedure, but sometimes lawyers have got to be creative, think outside the box, and I'm not sure we have that creativity now. Maybe we do, and maybe I just don't see it.
Interesting. Some of the things that get mentioned by a lot of people that do these are, for your generation, a lot of it was everybody was more or less friends. You can take people at their word, and that doesn't seem to be the case so much with newer attorneys. Do you have any thoughts on the current crop of young attorneys coming up?
Well, still the eminent domain bar is relatively small. Eminent domain grew out of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. Before that, condemnation cases were few and far between. And so the eminent domain bar, for the most part, knows the rules, knows the statute, and it doesn't make any sense to be contentious over an issue which has been decided by a court. It's just a waste of time. And so therefore I don't see, I hear in other specialties complaints like that, but I really don't see it in what I do.
Interesting. And then one of the things I always ask is, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as a lawyer with common sense, who was reasonable and fair with everybody. My client, the opposition, their lawyer. I don't see why we can't all be fair and behave like that.